seconds and we will start. We have now begun the recording. Good day to everybody, and thank you for joining our Client Enrichment Series presentation today. My name is Eric Fulton, and I am the National Program Manager for Customer Outreach and Communication based out of GSA headquarters in Washington, D.C. Most importantly, I am the host for today's Client Enrichment Series presentation. The topic you see on your screen there, we are talking about PBS OASIS, some updates and some information. OASIS, if you're unfamiliar, stands for our new Occupancy Agreement and Space Inventory System. PBS transitioned to OASIS last year, and we've had some successes with the system, and we've had some challenges as well. We're going to get into both in the next hour and a half. We have with us today a few presenters that are members of our OASIS team. They are going to share some information about the system, upcoming changes, and improvements. And we'll also, as we do, take your questions via the Q&A pod throughout today's presentation. So let's take a quick moment and just meet the OASIS team members that are with us today. We have Deanne Salazar. Deanne is a program specialist in our rent billing office. She focuses on customer billing and GSA policy. She's been with GSA for more than 20 years, beginning in Region 6, that's out of Kansas City, and has been in central office in this position for about 16 years. We have Arissa Sopra with us. Arissa has been with GSA for over 10 years. Comes to us from Region 5, that's based out of Chicago, and she has, for the better part of the past 2 years, been a key member of the OASIS team and the National Rent Billing Office. Finally, we also have Trisha Johnson with us today. She's a business analyst in the Office of Real Estate Delivery in our National Capital Region. If you can't guess, that's here in the Washington, D.C. area. And she's currently on a detail with the National Rent Billing Office and the OASIS team. Trisha's been with GSA for about 15 years in the National Capital Region. In a moment, I'm going to go over the agenda and we'll start with some poll questions. But I do want to just take a quick few housekeeping announcements. We've automatically muted your audio, and that's to better control the sound quality of our presentation. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to be taking questions throughout the presentation, and we ask that you ask questions through the Q&A pod. There's a Q&A pod down at the bottom of your screen where you can ask questions, and we have our OASIS team members working behind the scenes who will get to and answer as many of them as they can throughout the course of this presentation. There is also on the bottom of the screen a chat pod. I'm going to explain the difference between the two. The chat pod is if you have a technical difficulty, if you're having trouble seeing or hearing the presentation, please make that known in the chat pod. However, if you have a question about OASIS, about occupancy agreements, about process and policy, about any of the subject matter we're talking about today, please put that in the Q&A pod. That is where our OASIS team members will be and will be pulling questions out of to answer. So I want to make sure I just stress the difference between those two things. Before we get started in earnest, we do want to go over the agenda for today's presentation. There it is right up on the screen. And if you are not viewing the screen, I will let you know that we are going to start and review the system's current status and some upcoming planned enhancements. We're going to share information about the new customer approval workflow that's coming soon. We're going to review existing communication and self-service tools, and we will wrap up with some live Q&A with our presenters today. So before I turn it over to our first presenter, we do have two quick poll questions to get us to know you a little bit better today. You can see the poll question on the slide. We are going to put a pop-up where you can respond, but I will read out poll question 1. We want to know, are you a current OASIS ordering official? And know that we invited ordering officials to this presentation. We also threw the doors open to supervisors and to others who are interested. So we want to know, yes, I am an ordering official. No, excuse me, no, I oversee or supervise ordering officials. Or you're not an ordering official. I would answer the fourth one, I'm not an ordering official. And if you're not sure, hey, we appreciate honesty. We'll wait a moment or two. We have lots of responses coming in. And I think it's time to end the poll taking, and I will report out that we have quite a few ordering officials with us today. And it looks like we have over 100 or so with us today, as well as a certain amount of supervisors as well. So that makes up, oh, a good, I don't know, 30, 40, I can't do math in my head, percent of the audience who are already ordering officials or who supervise ordering officials. And we do have several folks with us today, over 130, 120 or so, who are not ordering officials. So it looks like we are running the gamut between ordering officials, supervisors, and those who are here for more information. So we will move on to our second poll question. There we go. And our second poll question is just for those ordering officials out there. So if you answered that you are not an ordering official, you can go ahead and sit this one out. And we want to know for our OASIS ordering officials, have you received an OA to approve yet? And the choices that we have are yes, yes, I have, and I was able to approve it. Yes, but the agency has not ready to approve it yet. Yes, but haven't been able to approve it for a technical reason, or no, not yet. We'll give a moment. All right, I want to thank everybody for replying so quickly to that. It looks like we have, of our ordering officials who responded, 44% have received and approved their OA. We do have a small group, 6%, who have received but have not been ready to approve it yet. And we do have 18% who received but have been unable to do so for a technical or system issue. Think we might be addressing that at a certain point today. And then a significant portion here, about 1/3, who not yet. We are still waiting for that first OA to come through. All right. All right, so I am going to transition here to begin the program in earnest, and we're going to start with a speaker I have yet to introduce, because we have with us today Vicki Morell, who is going to provide some opening remarks. Vicki is the Deputy Assistant Commissioner in PBS's Office of Portfolio Management and Customer Engagement, and she is going to begin the presentation and then turn it on over to members of the OASIS team. So Vicki, welcome.
Thank you, Eric. I would like to welcome you all to OASIS and this Client Enrichment series. So we know this transition has not been easy for our customers, and there have been some hiccups along the way, but GSA is committed to do better. We are very grateful for your feedback, your input, and your patience as we've been working through this rollout and the challenges that have come along with a new system. Over the past few weeks, we have held a series of troubleshooting sessions with some of our customers. Thank you to those who have participated. Out of those sessions, we have been able to identify your top issues and are working diligently to address as many as we can. We know that you would like to see read-only access roles, simplifying the OA approval process, more regular communication, better reporting capabilities, correction of billing errors, and reconciliation of square footage. Next slide. So, we've heard you. And what can you expect from OASIS moving forward? An improved customer workflow. The team is working with the developers now to simplify the OA approval process with OASIS and provide view-only access roles. Also, we've increased communication and including a bi-weekly newsletter. We will continue to clean up the systems, including stuck OAs, and we established a team to help provide reporting capabilities. These improvements will be discussed in more detail in this presentation. So with that said, I would like to turn it over to Deanne Salazar.
Thanks, Vicki, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be back talking to everyone on this client enrichment series. For those of you that I haven't met yet, like Eric introduced, I am with the Rent Bill Management Office and have been here for quite a while. I'm also the OASIS project manager. So I'll kind of be giving a whole overview on where the system is right now, and then some things that are coming to address some of those issues. So we wanted to kick it off here and just kind of talk about the OASIS system, what it is. Maybe we can answer some of those frequently asked questions and kind of establish our baseline before we go through and start talking about what we've been doing this year. Next slide, please. Okay, so as Eric said, OASIS's official name is GSA's Occupancy Agreement and Space Inventory System. So we've shortened it to OASIS. And the system's purpose is to manage all of GSA's occupancy agreements, and then those records become OA records that then go in and feed our GSA bills. It also handles our inventory information, our release of space information, and all of those historical billing informations. The system is also now being used to distribute OAs directly to customers. So that replaces our previous patchwork arrangement where individuals would send OAs through email systems to individual contacts, or maybe even in some case mail those out. So how did we get here? So the OASIS system itself was the system that GSA used to replace several custom-built AG network systems. So GSA had an OA tool, GSA had a drawing tool for our owned inventory. We had internal drawing maintenance tools, and then we had a rent bill management tool that was used when we finalized your OAs. So all of those systems were collapsed and put into OASIS. We went live August 22nd of 2003, so about 8 months ago, and have kind of been working through that process. Slide. So we also wanted to take this minute to kind of address a common question that we're getting about the OA and what we mean when we say occupancy agreement or OA. So hopefully everyone is kind of familiar that the OA is the record that we use in OASIS to create the bill and to create the occupancy agreement document. We use OA a little bit interchangeably there, but now that OA record can be viewed by the customer and can be exported into that OA occupancy agreement document. That document is covered under regulation as a formal interagency agreement between GSA and the customer. It's meant to specifically outline your rental terms, to seek your approval for going forward with projects, and then that record is used to create the basis of the bill that will be IPAC'd through our OA billing system. So the OA itself has been codified into that language, and it's an important document for GSA. Oh, can we go back one slide? Sorry. It's also our trigger to award a contract. So GSA cannot move forward with a lease award, or in the case of a federal construction project with a TI award, without that agency commitment. We've heard of the OA described as a gentleman's agreement or a paperwork exercise or a documentation, but it is really forming a formal agreement between our two agencies. So on the next slide, we kind of talk about what OASIS isn't, or what the OA isn't. So we do want to kind of set proper expectations before we go through the rest of the slides. OASIS is GSA's system where we manage the rent and the inventory and the occupancy agreement. It unfortunately cannot be customized to fit each agency's internal OA approval. It is our mechanism for getting the OA to your agency and for getting that OA back, but we still need each agency to manage their internal process the way they did before OASIS, and to work those through their internal processes. We are working to find common things that will improve the system for everyone, find a way to help you sort and filter your OAs so that you can better manage that internal process. But we are working across 430 unique agencies. And there, I think, are about 430 unique processes that you all use for supporting that function. And GSA does not have the funding to customize our system to meet each agency's need. The other thing that OASIS does not have is historical information. So we migrated a very limited amount of historical OAs over to OASIS. Those mainly included OAs that were expiring in the second half of FY23 so that they could be used if an OA needed to be extended or had a final reconciliation payment. The payment information was migrated from August of 2023 forward. So the system itself does not contain any of the information on historical rent or billing. However, the GSA PBS customer dashboard does have several years of financial information, and the rent on the web will show you your rent bill back to 1999 if you've been in those space. So that information is out there, it's just not in OASIS. And then the final thing that we're going to kind of talk about is that the OA itself is no longer being used as a budget document. That was one of the changes that we made with OASIS. GSA over the last decade or 2 decades have strayed a little bit away from the primary purpose of that OA as an interagency agreement. And we were using it for a variety of documentation, communication, budgeting, and planning purposes that really confused the purpose of the OA and caused a lot of, I think, angst on both parties' sides as we were trying to figure out, is this a final OA? Is this the terms? So the OA with OASIS was brought back to its original purpose, and now it's being used as an award is imminent. We need your approval. We need to go on. We'll talk about that a little bit in the next section, but that does mean that the OA includes actual billing information, actual terms and conditions, but does not include estimates or forward projections. The biggest one that comes up a lot is your operating cost. Those that were familiar with the old OA tool and the old OA documents, we used to include a 3% operating escalation through the life of that OA. This was just a market value that we were using to estimate. It was not an accurate estimate based off the last several years of real estate conditions. So that's been removed from the OA. For those agencies that liked it and would like to keep using it, you can always, it's a 3% compounded interest calculation, and that can still be used, but the OA document itself will now only include that actual data. GSA will also continue to provide that rent estimate through the GSA OCFO office that will project your rent estimates out 2 years. So the combination of all of those tools together still meet that need we feel like that was in the old OA tool. All right, so let's talk about some of the policy and process improvements and delve a little bit deeper into that OA timing, as that was one of the major changes with OASIS. Next slide, please. So as we said, GSA is no longer using that OA as a forward budgeting or project planning document. This has significant advantages for both parties. It really means that when you get an OA from GSA now, it's going to be accurate, it's going to contain actual information, and that you can rely on one version as your approval. And what you're approving isn't a ceiling amount, it's not an estimate, it is the actual deal. In its place, we are using the CPA or the client planning agreement. That's used during the strategic requirements phase to document the procurement that we're going through and the project that you would like us to pursue on your behalf. It includes that financial information that used to be in that 2, 3, or 5 year forward pro forma OA. And then after that, you'll work with your project manager through the normal project management updates if there are changes to cost or terms as you narrow in on that design. And then you'll get to the point where we are ready to do an award because we know we have the actual financial information, and we go to the OA. And on the next slide, Perfect. So this is set now when the award is imminent. It means that when you approve it, this is the deal that GSA was able to get. And there's a window of a few weeks between when GSA has those final terms and conditions, understands what the deal is going to be, and before we execute the lease. That now is the point that we're sending that OA to you. So when you see that OA, you can rely that that amount is going to be the amount that you were billed after occupancy. The only time that we would modify and change that is if there is a contract change during the project build out. So maybe after we award the lease, you come to GSA and say you need more space, or maybe there's a new need and you need some additional TI and we need to get that into the contract. That would be the only time that we would come back to you and change that rental amount. So it has a lot of benefits for both parties as far as a reliable, transparent process and document now, but it does take some getting used to as we transition away from the older budget planning process. The other key thing that is going to be important for both parties is that when you receive those OAs now, we need a review and an approval in a fairly short turnaround time. And that's because this is the final deal. So if there is a problem with the OA at this point, that means there's a problem with our procurement and we need to take some steps and get things back in line. So that review and approval, the volume should be much lower, but it needs to be much faster than it was in the past. Another key policy and process improvement was around our square footages. So OASIS is a COTS product. That means it's a commercial off-the-shelf product, and it utilizes common commercially equivalent practices. So for those of you that are familiar with GSA's old OA tool process, we had various decimal points that were being used. We had 5, 7, 9, 11 in one case, depending on the record and depending on the system that you were in. That is not commercially equivalent to be that specific down to the 11th decimal point. So with OASIS, we converted everything to 2 decimal points. That means our rentable usable factor, the figure that we multiply your usable square footage by, is now 2 decimal points. When it comes to monetary figures, we go with dollars and 2 cents. So no more 6 pence or a fraction of a penny is being applied. And our square footage figures are all rounded to 2 decimal places. That does mean that during the migration and the transition, you may have seen minor changes to your square footage as it adjusted to that new rounding convention. For most of our OAs, that was between 10 and 20 square feet. If you had one of the truly large occupancies in the 500,000 to 1 million plus square feet, you would have seen slightly more of a variance correction there, but they were all within that rounding convention. The other thing that's a big benefit to both parties that we get with OASIS is the ability to show you 2 types of square footage. So previously, we kept our OA tool square footage in one system, and we kept our inventory measured square footage in a different system. Now they're combined into 2 different panes of your OA record. So the location tab shows what is the actual measured square footage or the actual assigned square footage. For leases, that's usually pretty close or exactly what you're being billed. On our own spaces, though, we occasionally have circumstances where we will measure a space, tell you it's 1,000 square feet, you move into the space, and then we come in behind and we remeasure the space using more advanced measurement techniques that get down to the width of the wall. Or we build out the space on the other side of your wall, and that changes where that measurement lies. Another common thing that happens is you put up a dividing wall in your space. And now, even though you didn't change the envelope, those 2 spaces now sum to a different value. So GSA has always said, we're not going to change the bill when we change those measurement changes, but you'll see them reflected on your locations tab. So you might see that the space that you're in is actually 1,010 square feet. But then when you look at your bill, you're being billed for 1,000 square feet. That variance is a legitimate variance based on measurement changes. And you'll see the amount you're going to be billed on your payment tab. So this will kind of give you some planning information and just to check if you are trying to do any internal design so that you can understand what space actually measures to. And then finally, the rent bills no longer include that usable square footage or that RU factor. They contain just the rentable square footage. And that's a product of how we bill. We bill on the rentable square footage. And now that we have both of those pieces of information in the system together, the rent bill was cleaned up to only show the rentable amount. All right, our next policy improvement is around tenant improvements. And in my opinion, this is the one that is going to have the biggest positive benefit for everyone, but I don't think that we've had time to realize it yet because it's only been 8 months. So tenant improvements were changed from a rate per square foot on the rent bill to a monthly dollar amount. The rate per square foot is still used when we calculate your TI allowance. So when we're deciding how much tenant improvements that you can have as part of your occupancy, we still go through the process of calculating an allowance, working with you to see how much is spent. But once you get to the OA phase, we're ready to award. So we know the total principal amount that we are going to award. And TI is a strict amortization calculation. So once we award it, that principal is going to be paid back over the term as a monthly amount. In the past, because it was shown as a rate per square foot, if square footage changed either through the project and once you got to final occupancy or after occupancy, if you expanded or reduced space, that rate would also have to be altered so that we could get to the same principal payback amount. It caused a lot of confusion on agencies' behalf as it would look like the rate per square foot was changing and that we were amortizing more or less. And it also created some confusion on our side as the square footage had to also be accompanied by a rate decrease or increase. So by moving to a monthly amount, you know that regardless of what happens to the square footage, you're paying back X amount every month, and that amount will not change. The other thing that OASIS did is they changed your OA summary so that we're no longer showing a start and end date for the TI. We're just showing you the amortization terms. So we might show that there's $1 million of TI and it's being amortized over 10 years, 120 months at X percentage. If you want to see the actual start and stop date, you can look into the OA record to get that from the payment schedule start and stop date. But by not putting it on the occupancy agreement document, we're not committing to that start and stop date in the case that we have a project that occupancy slides. So before, if we had an occupancy and we were expecting to move you in February, we'd say the TI is from February of 24 through January of 34. If you ended up, project delays happened and you ended up moving in until July, we would be moving those dates to July and June, but the occupancy document wouldn't reflect that. And so now we just tell you whenever it starts, you're agreeing to pay back this amount over this amount of time. And then if you need the specifics for your planning purposes, you can pull that directly from the OA record itself. All right. Joint use is our next policy improvement. So joint use has kind of been an issue for GSA for about the last 20 years, I'd say, or 25. When we moved to a commercial off-the-shelf product, joint use was not supported. It is not a commercial practice. It was kind of a GSA invention on our pricing policy. So we changed it and changed our approach to joint use. So joint use was removed as a separate line item in October of 23. So at the start of this fiscal year, joint use no longer appeared on your bills. Instead, any building that had joint use within it, that joint use space was converted to common space. That's reflected in the building's RU now and reflected in the rentable square footage, but you will not see it as a separate line on the bill or on the OA. And then finally, one of the big changes that we wanted to make sure that we covered was in the realm of clauses. So the entire OA document was streamlined when we went to OASIS. All of those boilerplate clauses were removed from the OA document and were placed in the pricing policy guide so that we had a consistent guide that covered everything that was part of our occupancy agreements. In addition to that, we did a full audit of all of our ad hoc clauses and tenant agency specific clauses that were on our OAs. And we found some issues. A lot of those ad hoc clauses, they included things that were project specific or facility management specific and didn't belong in an interagency rent document. We also unfortunately found some things that violated or contradicted pricing policy. So all of the clauses were removed from our OAs to ensure that we have a consistent, accurate approach to our billing and that there's no confusion for either party on what we're signing. There are still 9 specialized clauses that will be dropped into an OA if that OA meets certain conditions such as return on investment, free rent, agency funded shell, for example. But all other clauses were removed. So I know it's a little bit of a pain point for both our internal users and our customers, but I can tell you all of our collective legal groups are heaving a huge sigh of relief over this change. So that was kind of the overview of where we are and how we kind of got to OASIS and how we got to these changes. So hopefully that answered some of our questions. And now I'm going to turn it over to Arissa to kind of recap the last 8 months.
Thanks, Deanne. Okay, next we'll talk about current status of OASIS, billing challenges we faced, user access, and customer approval workflow challenges. Next slide. OASIS went live August of last year, as Deanne mentioned. Since then, the OASIS project team has focused on many priorities, like stabilizing customer agency rent, identifying critical system fixes, standardizing customer access, and addressing GSA reporting gaps, just to name a few. In order to address the critical issues, the OASIS project team is currently on a 2-week release cycle. This is to implement both the technical and the functional changes in OASIS, so updates are realized by the end users in a 2-week turnaround. This is extremely rapid and a very uncommon release cycle. The OASIS team has been dedicated to this very aggressive cycle since November and will continue throughout the rest of this fiscal year. The releases are now transitioning focus to customer approvals, reporting, and owned occupancy drawing related fixes. At the end of March, the OASIS project team held 20 customer listening sessions over a 2-week time frame to grasp a better understanding of the customer experience. As a result, this helped the project team to identify areas of improvement and continue the discussion around the current approval process. Coming up in the future slides, you'll hear more about the outcome of that initiative and the current status of the customer approval process. Next slide. If we've lost anyone at this point, I'd like to reel you back in, hopefully for more than just a few minutes. But I want to start off by assuring everyone that there are no trends with billing issues. GSA rent collection is currently in line with historical revenue, expected estimates, and the rent test, meaning there are no systemic billing concerns at this time. We do want to acknowledge that there have been past complications and those problems have been corrected. One of those issues were instances of incorrect rentable square footage being displayed on some rent bills. However, the billing amounts were correct in those situations. Another case we experienced were multiple escalating PBS fee billing adjustments. In the February billing period, corrective adjustments were issued, reversing those incorrect PBS fee billing adjustments. Duplicate lease operating cost charges were also reported. And as a result of GSA and customers adjusting to a new system, there have been delays with individual OAs. Short-term workarounds also contributed to that, but the process is largely smoothed over with small pockets of OAs still outstanding. We want to thank everyone for their patience as we continue to take immediate action when problems arise and work with agencies to make them whole and correct those issues. Next slide, please. There is a brand new process for user access, which has been a huge change for GSA. Previously, there were no internal checks on who approved OAs. When implementing this process, there were delays around identifying missing contacts, including locating all of the appropriate customer agency approvers. While this did take a bit of time in the beginning, in the long run, we think this effort will prove beneficial to both parties, knowing the designated contacts when it comes to actually approving the OAs. Now, user access is a two-step approval process using the customer access form, which can be found on the GSA OASIS site. First, an individual requests access from their supervisor. Then approval from the customer internal authorizing official, also known as CHOW, is requested. Once both of those approvers have signed the access form, meaning the supervisor and the CHOW, the requester then submits that form to GSA using the email address identified on the access form. Under the old process, GSA facilitated the CHOW approval step, which led to extremely long delays on both sides. So the new approach has streamlined that process, and the requester now coordinates directly with their agency CHOW. There have also been delays in adding new users to OAs. GSA has taken this step on ourselves to help facilitate that process. Due to that change, the ordering official editor function was removed from the customer portal permanently. Accounts are disabled after 90 days. You're likely already familiar with that standard from using other systems. This is a security requirement which can't be changed. So we're working on establishing notifications to alert users of the 90-day inactivity rule. Until then, setting a personal reminder to log into OASIS about every 90 days or so could be helpful. The good news is if your account is disabled, the reactivation is fairly painless. Users send an email to PBS OASIS accounts at gsa.gov requesting to be reactivated. And the turnaround is typically a few days. We've seen many the same day. That email address will be provided again at the end of the presentation, just for your reference. Next slide, please. We want to acknowledge that communication and change management has been lacking. Communication has not been as frequent as we have liked. There were delays on when communication was distributed, which was a product of how fast we were moving at the time and how many critical system issues we experienced, which in turn did not allow us the ability to hold individual customer meetings. We also recognize that change management is in the same category as communication. Time was not on our side when implementing the new customer role process or transitioning to how the new role functions in OASIS. There was also the added component of balancing customer users with different varying needs, along with internal system stakeholders. Additionally, with training, we're working to find a way that's more accessible and better meets customer needs. There is a plan in place to address all of these areas in the immediate future, which will be discussed in upcoming slides. Next slide, please. This list represents issues we are aware of and have been raised by many customer agencies, such as stuck OAs, inconsistency with the reassign function and notifications, missing approval buttons, and the ability for GSA to pull back stuck OAs. If you see any of your concerns on this list, please know we are working to address them. If you want to know exactly how we're going to do that, then you're probably going to want to stick around for this next topic. I'll hand it back to Deanne so she can fill everyone in on the details.
Thanks, Arissa. Next slide, please. So the really exciting news is we are going to do a rebuild of the customer approval workflow. We'll go through the details in the next few slides, but it will include a view-only role. It will focus on the routing and tracking that's currently causing some issues. It will clean up the action items and notifications, and there is a significant training and communication piece to this. So on the next slide, we'll kind of explain how we got here. So as Arissa said, we held a lot of customer listening sessions. We took a look at all of the service tickets that we've been receiving, looked at some different issues that we were hearing from our own users, and we sat down with our developer, our vendor, to say, here's where we need all of the fixes. We've been nibbling around the edges to kind of address these on a one-on-one basis, but what can we globally do to fix this? And so our developer kind of dug in and our team dug in, and we kind of came up with the recommendation that we really needed to replace the COTS out of the box customer approval workflow and do something that is still within the COTS framework, but has a lot more customization and configuration. So on the next slide, we are still, to set some expectations, we are still finalizing both the functional and technical requirements. We are moving very quickly with this. We have a fast release schedule already in place, and this has kind of just slid right on, into that framework. But we are still looking at those different requirements. And then from that, the developer will come back with the specific solutions to meet each of those. So we don't have all the nitty-gritty details today, but we can give you insight into what we're looking at. Once that is approved, we'll take about 2 months to complete the build. So we're anticipating the middle of June to get this out into the system experience on your side. We're really focusing in on all of those pain points that you brought to our attention, that arose from how actions are transmitted to you, how they're taken in and out of your queue, how they're reassigned or not correctly reassigned. So we do want to set the expectation that it's still not going to be customized for each agency, but we are looking for things that collectively will help how you assign the work and how you move the work and claim and report where an OA is in the process. This workflow is also focused exclusively on the customer approval workflow. We're not touching the billing question workflow or the release of space workflow at this time. I think the most exciting news based on customer feedback and even the questions that we're getting today is that it is going to include a customer view only role. I do want to set expectations that those view only users are still going to be within a limited license framework. So we will talk over the next 2 months whether or not some of your ordering officials want to be changed to view only users. And then we will have additional view only licenses available based on your OA inventory size. And it is still, again, going to be a smaller group. It is not everyone in your agency, but it will expand and most likely double the users that you currently have in the system. Next slide. As I said on the previous slide, we're still defining the final nitty-gritty design requirements, but the things that we have in our functional requirements that we're going to address is to take out that complicated COTS-driven workflow where you're passing the OA on and off, which requires accepting it, assigning it, reassigning it. We're also going to change it so that OAs are visible to everyone that has that AB code, so that it is not like it is now where if you don't have a user in the system yet, or a user has become deactivated when the OA is sent, they're never able to view it. That's going to be removed, and it's going to be a living record instead of a static moment in time record. There's not going to be any accepting, reassigning action items. We're going to be looking at the OA record itself instead of creating that separate workflow. And then a big thing that we've heard from all of our users and completely understand is that it's difficult right now to see who has the OA within your agency if somebody has taken it and is working on it. So we are going to address it so there's complete visibility who has an OA, where the OA is in the process. You'll be able to see all of the OAs that are with your agency for review, even if another individual has taken it and is working on it. We have improved notifications in our design. When I say that, I mean both the notifications on your portal as well as outside the system notifications that come through email. So those will both be addressed in our design. We're also going to have the ability for GSA to withdraw an OA. We know currently, once the OA goes to you as a customer, it is frozen and with the customer, and GSA can't take any action on it, which sounds fantastic in principle. But we do have cases where after the OA was sent, someone says, I fat fingered that, there's an extra zero, or I forgot to include the parking. Or in a few cases, we've sent it, but all of the users at the agency have become deactivated in the interim. So this is going to give GSA a way to pull those records back so they don't become stuck and they can be fixed and revised and resent to you. And then finally, there's also going to be a cleanup for all of those action items, OAs, notifications, et cetera, that have become stuck with you. And that means either the action has come to you and you can't take any action on it and you can't close the request, or those that you took the action, they've moved on, but the action item or the notification kind of stuck around behind and is constantly showing up every time you open your portal. We're going to be cleaning all of that out. So there's a lot more to come as we get into that nitty-gritty design, and we will be sharing all of that with you. But this is kind of our high level, what you can expect in the next 2.5 months. Next slide, please. In addition, we have some non-release items that we'll be working on at the same time. The first is just working with our GSA OA editors to improve the quality of the OAs. Our users were in a very similar boat as our customer users. They were learning the system for the first time. There were some bumps along the way as they kind of learned the proper way to input some data, the way to kind of move data through the system. So we know the quality of OAs that you've been getting is not up to the usual standard that we would like. So we are separately working with them so that when these do start to come back through to you, they will be coming through correctly, accurately, and with less of that back and forth. We're also adopting a lot more regular communication channels with you as the customer, newsletters, expanded opportunities for you to submit questions, and looking at those tools around the communication process so that as we roll this out, it's a lot more transparent and we handle that communication and change management. The customer user guide will be updated. That customer approval section will be replaced by the new build, and that will be sent out. In the interim, our older guide is still available on that external PBS OASIS site and can help you get through the next 2.5 months before this new build comes out. Once the new build comes out, we'll pull that one down, replace it with the new one. We'll also be distributing that through our communication channels. And finally, we are already talking about the training for this new build. We are planning 2 live sessions where we'll have a demo, have an opportunity for you to ask questions, look through your system to see if you're seeing things the same way that we're describing them. And then for those users that can't attend the live session, we'll also be recording brand new video sessions that will be posted on our website that can be used both for those that can't come. And then for those of you that are probably like me, you understand everything in the training. Maybe you'll go on vacation for a couple weeks, you come back, you try to do something and you can't remember which button to push when. You'll have those videos to refer back to. And those are in the same place as the user guide. If you need to reference those in the interim, we still have the older training material up there. Right. And most importantly, the communication piece. Like I said, we will be keeping you all updated as we get further along this design. Once we get the options and we get a firm schedule, we'll be sharing that. So you'll know when these changes are coming, when the training is occurring, what you can expect to see. That will all be communicated through our new channels, which I'll turn it back to Arissa to kind of talk about the new customer bulletin.
Thanks, Deanne. We'll be covering the OASIS bulletin as well as reporting and training and user guides. As Deanne mentioned, we're launching a customer-specific communication called OASIS Bulletin. The very first issue will be released next Thursday, April 18th. It's going to include topics such as the system updates, release notes, policy improvements, helpful tips, and general OASIS announcements. This will be especially useful to stay up to date with the new customer workflow process that Deanne just delivered. Currently, the bulletin is scheduled as a bi-weekly communication, and all current OASIS customer users will automatically be added to receive the bulletin, but anyone can subscribe. It's not just for ordering officials. If you don't see the bulletin in your inbox by next Friday, please let us know. You can do that by emailing the PBS OASIS at gsa.gov. And if you're not an ordering official and want to be added to the mailing list, you can also email PBS OASIS at gsa.gov to be added. The next topic is a bit outside of OASIS, but we do have someone online to directly speak about it. Jessica, I'll hand it over to you.
Hi, thanks, Arissa. My name is Jessica Best. I'm the National Program Manager of Customer Business Analytics in the Office of Portfolio Management and Customer Engagement. And I'm also the project manager right now for looking at customer reporting, what reports the customers were receiving, what reports they are no longer receiving, and how we can fill that gap. So we have two strategies. The first term is an interim strategy, and then our long-term solutions. So in the interim, we're gathering customer reports to see where we can fill a majority of the requirement. A lot of the data that customers have been receiving is currently available via the PBS customer dashboard on D2D. It may not contain all of the elements, but it does contain a large number of them. And those elements are available on the occupancies tab, the rent tab, and the locations tab. And when we send this slide deck out, you'll see the link to accessing the PBS customer dashboard. And more to come on our interim solutions. Our long-term solutions include evaluating all customer report needs that we've been able to identify, creating options to both meet GSA's and customers' long-term needs, looking to provide self-service solutions, mostly in the form of the PBS customer dashboard. So we're looking at enhancing that and providing more information via that method. But we will provide more information on our long-term solutions in the coming months. So keep your eyes open, and we're looking forward to working with our customers to get them the data that they need, with that first jumping off point being that customer dashboard. So thanks for letting me jump on here today, and I will pass it back to Arissa.
Thanks, Jessica. We look forward to hearing more on that. We heard a little while ago from Deanne that the new customer approval workflow is being built over the next 2 months. Until then, we wanted to quickly run through some common trends we found when it comes to approving OAs in the current workflow. Many of you are already familiar with this view, but for those of you who aren't, this is a partial up-close view of the customer action item queue. In this example, there are 2 OA records shown, and both can be seen in any of the agency's ordering officials action items list. Before an OA can be approved, returned, or sent for clarification, the OA must be accepted. To avoid confusion, I want to be very clear that accepting an OA, you can go back, Tricia. Before accepting an OA, I want to be clear that when accepting an OA, it does not mean that you are approving an OA. Approving an OA is a completely separate action. So on the screen right now, clicking the box on the left side of the OA record is the first step in accepting your OA. Next slide, please. Take a moment and notice the status here. Currently, the status is assigned for both of the OA records. Up until this point, the OA record remains in everyone's queue for all ordering officials. In order to claim the OA or pull it out of another ordering official's action items list, so they are unable to take action on this OA, you must complete the final step to accept the OA. To do that, you'd navigate to the right side of the selected action item and click the accept hyperlink as shown on this slide. Next slide, please. In this view, we see the status of the top OA record changed to accepted, which means I, as the ordering official, accepted this OA and have removed it from all other ordering officials' action items queue. So now I can take action on this OA to approve, return, reassign, or request clarification. At this point, all I have done is accepted the OA. I have not approved it. So congratulations, you've all just virtually accepted an OA with me. Next slide, please. We've reached the end of the presentation and now we're at the Q&A portion. So let's take a look and see what questions have been submitted.
Thanks, Arissa. We've gotten a lot, so thank you. We're going to work through and answer as many live as we can. Any that we're unable to answer, we will provide an answer in the follow-up. There are a few that were very specific to an individual OA, and we will reply directly to you on those. So the first question I got, which I think is the most important question, is this a hard reboot or is OASIS still available during this rebuild? OASIS is still available, will still be used as it's currently being used through this period, and then we will have a launch date when the new release comes out, most likely over a weekend, and we'll take it down before, and then it'll come back and you'll be under the new approval process. So please continue to use OASIS. Please review the OAs to the best of your ability during this period to keep the work flowing. You can continue to report issues with those OAs through the PBS OASIS at gsa.gov mailbox, but the system will still remain operational during this period. So many questions. So we have one about the different roles. And if we could just clarify what roles are available to customers. So currently, the ordering official role is the only role available to customers. This means that an individual that has that role will be able to go into OASIS, will be able to see their agency's AB codes, and will be able to accept and approve OAs as Arissa just demonstrated. Some agencies have made the decision to have folks in with this role, even though that individual isn't someone they want approving OAs. And again, it's all tracked and auditable. So if you do want to go that route, you can have folks in there. You can say, move around, review, do what you need to do, but please don't hit accept and approve. And if someone does that, you'd be able to tell right away that that did happen. However, we know that's not ideal, and that's why we have this view-only role that is coming in mid-June. So right now, ordering official is it. If you'd like to be in it over the next 2.5 months, you will need to use the ordering official role, but following that, there will be a view-only role, which will have the same view rights. You'll be able to look and move around the OAs the same. You just won't be able to edit, accept, approve information in there. So hopefully that answered yours. There were a lot of other questions about how can I get access if I don't have it, or what does that access process look like now? So one of the big changes with OASIS was to standardize who can and can't approve OAs. Unfortunately, before OASIS, GSA would send an OA to their contact, and that contact would have to internally know who was and wasn't allowed to sign an OA for their agency, would have to do that internal routing. And then GSA would accept the OA that we got back. With OASIS, we need to define and determine who is and is not allowed to sign an OA on behalf of an agency. So that is part of the user access process, which is why it's a little bit more formalized and is taking a little bit longer. So if you would like access, you can go onto our external OASIS page, which will show all the links here in a minute, and there is a form that you fill out. That form is signed by your supervisor, and then it's also signed by that CHOW that Arissa talked about. That's your internal authorizing official. So you would complete that form, you would reach out through PBS OASIS accounts. We would tell you who that individual that also has to approve for your account, and you would get their approval as well. Initially, we tried to be that middleman that would take the form and then go take it to your CHOW. That caused those weeks and months long delay. We tried that throughout, the fall and winter, and then we piloted what if we had individuals requesting the access go directly to their CHOWs. Those responses cleared up immediately. So I think having that internal email come from an internal user greatly improved the process. So that's how how we'll work this. So we'll give you the child's contact information. You would reach back out to them, get them to approve it. And then access, we had questions about how long access takes. It's under 5 working days. So we try to address them as they come in, but we have committed to 5 working days as the maximum amount. And once it comes in, we have some back end stuff that our IT security group has to do to enter that information into the form, set up that account, get that approval in the system, and then activate that account. So there are several steps that have to happen, and it does take longer because your external agencies coming into GSA system to do that. So when we get to the point that we are ready to start changing users over to view-only users, we will roll that out and have a conversation about how we can streamline and make that a little bit simpler while we're doing this larger load. So more information will come on that. All right. So we also had a follow-up question related to how do I get access to OASIS and how do I get access to ROW? So ROW is our GSA rent on the web. That is ran from our GSA OCFO department, and we will put the link into the after action information that we send out. You will send a form to them. It actually has to be faxed to them, and that has to do with the Treasury information and the IT security rules around that. But we'll get that information and connect that for anyone that would like to pursue ROW access. We also got a lot of questions about floor plans. So in general, GSA has drawings and floor plans available for our federally owned space. Lease space is covered by the lease contract. We do have cases where there are lease drawings available, but those are not stored in OASIS as they are not part of our inventory data. Our own drawings are stored in OASIS, and when you get a new occupancy agreement, they will also come with a scenario plan, which will show the outline of your floor plan and the space that you'll be occupying. That'll be found, correct me if I'm wrong, Arissa, in the Notes and Documents tab, correct?
Correct.
Yes. And you'll be able to click on it and it'll say scenario for your OA. If you have a current billing OA, right now we do not have those linked. That is a future enhancement, probably looking at, another fiscal year or 2 until we can get individual assignment drawings connected for each and every occupancy agreement. So those are coming, but for right now, they're available on every new OA that you receive. And then if you have an expansion or if you have a reduction, you would also get an update to that assignment drawing. All right. Let me grab. We had another pricing question that came up that we did not cover about owned expiration dates. So there were some questions about what happened to owned OA expiration dates. So the owned OAs were changed to open occupancies that renew based on their shell rate expiration date. So every owned occupancy, we kind of had a system where we had OA expiration dates on owned occupancies. And when you got to the end of it, it was simply extended for another 10 years. We also have a 10-year shell rate. Sometimes those shell rate terms and those OA terms got off balance. So we had things that were expiring at different terms and had different rate resets. So the actual OA expiration date now renews every year annually with no action needed. So the dates were set out to January 1st of 2100 from a systemic system input. Your shell expiration date, though, is what is going to drive that conversation of, do you still want to be in this building? Do you still want to have space with us? And that will be what triggers the rent reset. So hopefully that kind of answered that question. And then one other question about the TI on the pricing is that why is general and custom no longer separated? And the reason is because all TI is TI once it's spent. So the TI allowance is separated into a general and a custom amount. to meet the different requirements for what your AB tier requires in space. So the general is the amount that everybody in the country gets, and then the customization amount is the amount that's based on your agency tier. So when we're putting together the allowance, those two different components are important separate components to let you know this is what everybody gets, this is what you have available to customize. However, once it's spent, that money is collected, whether it's general or custom, doesn't have any bearing on how the money is collected or recorded. So once the money is spent, it's all lumped together, and from a rent bill perspective, it all appears just as TI. This alleviates some of the confusion we had in auditors had trying to separate out the money or understanding when funds got paid back, where it should come from. It's all the same. The money all spends the same and is collected the same.
I had a couple, Deanne, if I can jump in.
Thank you, Arissa. Jump
No,
right in.
No problem. There was a question on how to find out who the customer internal authorizing official, or the CHOW, is for your agency. That is through the IT department, as Deanne had mentioned earlier. So you would email PBS OASIS accounts@gsa.gov, and we'll be sure to include that information after the presentation today, to just request your CHOW. When you are using the customer access form to initially request access from for OASIS, it has that email address also listed, and you can submit that to the PBS OASIS accounts@gsa.gov, and they will in turn provide that CHOW information back to you so you can continue getting approval for your access. There was also a question that asked, what do you mean no accepting action items? If I'm the only ordering official for my bureau, does that mean I don't need to accept it anymore? You do still need to accept the OA and go through those 2 steps that I just demoed in order to see the buttons that will allow you to approve, reject, or request clarification. So currently in the current process, you do still need to go through those 2 steps to accept the OA before you're able to approve or take any other actions on the OA. There was also a question under the reviewer list in OASIS, why is there a list of people that are not responsible for reviewing or approving our bureau's OAs? GSA does not designate routing for internal processes. So when the OAs are routed for a review, the OAs are sent to all the ordering officials that have access for that AB code. So then at that point, the ordering officials can take the action to accept the OA, like I had demonstrated earlier, to pull that out of the other ordering officials queue and into the personal queue, so they can then take action on that OA. There are also several questions about notifications and the user guide. In case you had missed it, Deanne mentioned a little while ago that those will all be rolled out with the new customer approval workflow. So make sure to look out for those after the 2-month rebuilds. And there was also same thing with the user guide questions and additional training, which will be rolled out at the end of the rebuild as well. And we'll be sure to include those in the OASIS bulletin for updates.
I have another question that came in about rounding. Someone said, you keep saying rounding. Is that rounding up? Is that rounding down? It is according to the standard rounding convention. So 5 is the magic number up, and under 5 is down. So we apply that across all of those calculations. We also have a pricing question about succeeding leases and signature requirements and some inconsistencies that you've been perceiving from the regions. So in general, the succeeding lease does not need a signature as long as we are not changing square footage, adding TIs, or changing the cancellation rights. However, if everyone remembers the new asset management alert that went into place last year, we are changing cancellation rights on leases. So most succeeding leases are requiring a signature right now or an approval because they have a change in cancellation rights. That's why most of them are coming through. But if for some reason one is not changing cancellation rights, it was previously non-cancelable and continues to be non-cancelable, then those do not need approval. So if you're getting some of those specific conflicting information, you can always directly email that PBS OASIS box with your specific OA number, and we can have a team look into that. But in general, that's why you might be hearing some of those different messaging around that. We also have several questions in here about how can we get in touch with you, or how can we contact you? Are there people that we can set up calls with? So we ask that all questions from agencies be sent to that pbsoasis@gsa.gov web email. That's a shared box that multiple different team members have access to. And it's a way for us to kind of streamline the communication so that we make sure that we're answering everyone's question and we can get the right resource connected with the agency to answer those questions. So if you'll send your initial inquiries into there, we'll make sure that we follow up and find someone that can answer those questions. Let's see. And then we're getting a lot of questions here about specific OAs or specific billing instances. With those, we're not able to answer those live, but please send those ones into the box and we will get someone on that right away. Someone did ask, where can I find the shell expiration date? All of that information is on your payment tab of OASIS. So when you go into the OASIS record, the OA record, you'll click on the payment and it will show you all of the different rates and their start and end dates. And that will apply when new rates are added or when rates come off. You'll be able to check all of them there. All right. Did you have another one, Arissa?
Yeah, I had two more. There was a question about downloading an OA from OASIS. The individual said that they have access, but they're not very familiar. So there is an option in the right-hand corner. There's a print option which allows you to print the OA and download the OA by tab or the OA summary. So that option is available in OASIS for you to use. There was also a question about consistency for ordering officials and not allowing more individuals to become ordering officials. So in order to approve OAs. So with the rollout of the view only, as Deanne had mentioned, that could be a potential option if you wanted the ordering official approvers to be able to actually approve the OAs, and then the view only option to just be able to access the OAs for viewing purposes. There's going to be more to come on that as we still have to sit with the developers and work on the design, but please stay tuned for updates on that.
We've also got several questions in here on releases of space. So we do not have the material together to talk about that today, but we can make sure that we get that out in our customer bulletin. I would also point you to the user guides right now on the page. They can kind of walk you through step by step how to submit those, but that is done directly in OASIS using the release of space function, and you can click on the box and identify the space you'd like to give back and send that to GSA. So we hear that you there's a lot of questions about that, and so we will make sure that we get information out about that in the next couple of weeks. If you have a specific one that you need help with in the interim, you can send that to the PBS OASIS box. And I'm also seeing questions about for billing, questions that you're no longer able to submit issues for OAs that are not currently being billed, but should be. That is definitely something we want to get fixed so that you can submit questions on those. So we'll include that in the rebuild. But in the interim, please send those also to the PBS OASIS box.
As a follow-on for that, Deanne, there was a question about after submitting a billing question, how can I follow up with the person that replied if I have more questions? You can actually submit another billing request in OASIS to be able to follow up with that individual if you do have additional or follow-on questions. So you can do that right in OASIS.
And another question that kind of came in that's probably on a few different people's minds. When you open your OA and you look at your contact list, you may see my name as an ordering official on your OA and wondering why there's someone on there that is not part of your agency. That's a system issue right now. We need to make sure that there's always at least one active ordering official on every single OA. So to make sure that no one ever completely deactivates an OA. My name was added as a placeholder. I, however, do not have customer access in OASIS, even though I am the PM and have access to everything else. So I will never be accepting OAs, reviewing OAs, or clicking the button, but you will see my name appear. So if I am the name that you see and you think that there's someone on there that shouldn't be, please ignore that. We're also working in the rebuild to see if we can either hide that or have that as something that's not even needed. But until then, please rest assured I will not be approving any OAs. I have plenty on my plate. So I covered this one. We got another question about how to submit billing questions. A lot of these. Yes, the email notifications will get updated to make sure we include the OA number in the subject line on those notifications. We're also working to get some other identifying information on there so that you will be able to use those. Right now, I know some of them are I mean, they tell you that you need to go in and look at something, but they're not really actionable. So we are going to fix that as well. Arissa, we got a question about accepting action items if you were the only ordering official on an OA. If you are the only ordering official, it's automatically accepted for you and assigned to you.
Oh, okay. Thanks for that clarification. We did have a question about if leases will be available in OASIS, and that though leases will not, you would still have to work with your leasing specialist to get a copy of your lease.
And then we have some questions about the pricing desk guide. That is not our group. So we will make sure that we connect with them and get that information in the after action FAQs that we send out to everyone. And I think with that, I know we have not answered all of the questions. We will definitely respond to all of them, especially the really technical ones after this call, and everyone will have access to those. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to our CE team to do a couple of last minute housekeeping items. And I do want to again thank everyone for spending some time with us today to talk through where we're at with OASIS and some of the exciting changes that are coming. This will not be the last conversation that we have together, but really do appreciate everyone's time and continued patience on this. All right, take it away, Eric.
Well, I want to thank you, Deanne and Arissa and Tricia, for all of the information, the time, and certainly the Q&A. I saw the queue of the Q&A going up. So I appreciate, and I'm sure that our customers do as well. A couple bits of housekeeping. We're going to get to some poll questions and some closeout here. But as long as you can hear the sound of my voice, you are welcome to keep adding questions to the Q&A pod. As Deanne had mentioned, we are going to export them at the end of this session, take a look at all of them. Some of them are very technical, some of them are very specific, so they require a little bit more on the back end to make sure that we're addressing properly. So again, as long as this session is live, which is approximately 10 more minutes, please do submit your questions. So now we're going to ask two quick poll questions. Oh, no. There it is. There we are. Yes, we're going to ask two quick poll questions. And just to see how we did and how we can serve our customers better. If you can't read the question on the screen, if you're dialing in, we want to know, as a result of attending today's session, how How more informed do you feel about the topic about PBS OASIS? Do you feel significantly more informed, somewhat more informed, or not much more informed? This is just a quick pulse check of our customers and of our sort of performance with the content. And we have one additional poll after this that's a little bit more specific. And so I'm seeing the results coming in here, and about 34% say that you are significantly more interested, or more informed, I apologize. And then about half, 54%, little more, are somewhat more informed. And then we do have a contingent, about 12%, who are not much more informed. And so we do want to hear from all of you, and particularly if you said you are not much more informed on this next poll question that we are going to pop up here. And so this is our second poll question, or I guess our fourth of the day, and we want to know is what we missed, what we could do better, what we could really hone in on for future OASIS presentations. What aspects of the OASIS system would you like us to cover in more detail? And this is a multi-check, so you can check all that apply. And I see that people are doing just that, which is great. So I'm going to give everybody just a moment to respond here. And then we do have a section that says other, please specify in the chat pane. And so if you are listening and you can't, I guess if you cannot see the poll questions or want to put something very specific into the chat, you're more than welcome to. We are monitoring that. I am going to end the poll now and note that everybody is a winner. We have people, about the lowest returning result is about 30%, and that is for site navigation, but we have a significant amount of people who responded, more than 50%, 60% here, live system demos and screen and scenarios. And then following that, the next highest is view and reporting capabilities. And I know that we touched upon that, but there's much more to come on viewing and reporting capabilities. Routing and customer workflow, significant amount of interest in, and I know that our team focused on that new process, which is upcoming in the near future. So a lot more to come on that. And then also we have the final one here, which are billing and square footage issues. So it seems like there is possibly a version 2.0 of this session in the future, along with the upcoming trainings. So I want to thank everybody for answering those questions. And so we are going to get the poll question away, and we've come to the final part of our presentation, where first, once again, I want to reiterate my thanks to the OASIS team, to Deanne, to Arissa, and to Trisha. Thank you, Jessica and Vicky, as well for joining us, and certainly all of our customers who are in attendance today. There were a lot of very informed questions in the queue, and we appreciate it. It is one of the best ways to make our systems and processes better, is to know exactly what our customer pain points are. And so we thank you for that and look forward to serving you with this system in the future. On the screen in front of you, if you can see, and we will send these to you after, we have some great upcoming additional virtual sessions in the Client Enrichment Series and elsewhere that you can take advantage of. The links will be clickable when the PDFs go out to you, but you can also learn more at www.gsa.gov/CES. 1 week from today, you can join us for Safeguarding Assets, Risk Management for Real Property. Again, that's Thursday, April 18th at 1:00 p.m. And then next month is eReader Digest. If you are a user of our eReader system, if you wish to be a user of our eReader system, you can come to that to have your questions answered, or as Deanne mentioned earlier, perhaps you haven't been using a system for a while, came back from vacation and forgot how to submit a work request. Come back here on Thursday, May 9th, and we will have that session for you. And then we just announced this new great session on the PBS Customer Dashboard. Reporting made easy. I saw several folks say they wanted more information about reporting in that last poll question. I would encourage you to attend PBS Customer Dashboard Reporting Made Easy. That is certainly an option to learn about reports that are available for all of our customer agencies. That is Thursday, July 11th at 7-Eleven, and that is at 1 p.m. And I am very excited to share information about our PBS Customer Forum. We've been doing this for several years. The 2024 forum is coming next month. It is virtual, so if you are here, you can also be there. It will be Tuesday, May 7th and Wednesday, May 8th. And so this event is 2 days of panel sessions, presentations, private and public sector expertise, GSA subject matter experts, customers. We just sent out to most people on this list and most of our customers a save the date. You can learn a lot more by clicking the link that will be coming out to you, but we are having some great presentations on things like workplace planning, safe and healthy environments, and much, much more. So that is the PBS Customer Forum. It is virtual on this same platform, Zoom for Government. So if you're here, you can be there, I'll be there, and I hope you will be too. That brings us to the end of our presentation today. One more final thanks to our internal team here with the Client Enrichment Series, the OASIS team, and all of you for coming, for sticking it out, for asking some very detailed and engaging questions. We will export those, we will respond, and we will return them to you. So as we come to the end of our time here, I just want to mention that the goal of the Client Enrichment Series is to engage our audience on workplace topics that contribute to your mission success and to your effective management of your real estate and workplace programs. Thank you once more for attending, and everybody have a great rest of your day.